Good afternoon. What's poppin'? It's your boy Big Rich, Queens, New York City, leader of the GGC crew. What's poppin'? Just rolled myself up a little bit of glue. Gentlemen, wipe your feet on the rug, throw some smoke in the atmosphere. Let's get right down to business. By the way of Cosa Nostra News and Ed Scarfo, salute and respect. Ex-Philadelphia Underboss Crazy Phil Leonetti talks Cosa Nostra, a new podcast. Valuetainment, which spoke with former Gambino underboss Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano last October, has now posted a new interview with another former Mafia underboss, Crazy Phil Leonetti, formerly of the Philadelphia crime family. Crazy Phil was a highly effective government witness who testified at several trials up and down the East Coast, having his 45-year prison sentence reduced to 5 years, 5 months, and 5 days as a result of his cooperation in helping crush the Philadelphia Mafia family, including his uncle Nicodemo, little Nicky Scarfo, one of the most vicious Cosa Nostra bosses ever. Crazy Phil rose to underboss under Scarfo before becoming a government informant in 1989. A disgracia. At that time, he was the highest-ranking member of the American Mafia to break his blood oath. Leonetti once said, "I never did nothing ruthless besides, well, I would kill people. But that's our life. That's what we do." Appearing on an evening news show once, Leonetti, his face filmed in shadow, said, quote, "I like the respect that I received from everybody in our family because I had quite a reputation, from being taught by my uncle the rules of the mob. He taught me how to kill people." He hated the Crazy Phil nickname while his uncle loved it. Quote, "I said I wanted to do something about the name," Leonetti recalled. Little Nicky says, "Are you crazy?" He said people would pay to have a nickname like that. When asked when he knew and understood what the Mafia was, Leonetti said he thinks he always knew, but added, "I really understood it when I was about 10 or 11 years old. They killed the guy, and he had his truck that was stolen, and he had to get rid of it. So he took me with him from Atlantic City to bring it back to Philly to get chopped up. And he was telling me the story as he was driving me, why he was bringing me." By the age of 23, Leonetti pulled the trigger on his first mob hit. He said, "I remembered the feeling I had. I felt cold and I didn't feel any remorse." Quote, "I ran behind him," recalled, "and I stuck the gun to his behind his head and I fired. And I thought he was running away because of the force of the gun moved him forward, And then he fell down, and I emptied my gun into him." Leonetti said he doesn't think about the people he killed. "To me, they were all bad people," he said. "I mean, they could have killed me too. I could have got killed. So I'm not. I can't worry about the past." Once Leonetti had participated in mob hits, he was qualified to become a made man. He was sworn into the ranks of La Cosa Nostra in a room full of fellow mobsters. He goes, "They pricked my finger. My uncle did," Leonetti said. "And they put a picture of a saint, blood. They had put the blood from my finger on the picture of the saint, and you lit the saint on fire in my hands, and I cupped my hands. And he told me, 'Don't make that saint fall out of your hands. Just keep juggling it until it burns out,' which I did. And as I'm doing that, he tells me, 'You gotta say, may I burn like this saint if I betray my friends.'" When his uncle, little Nicky, took over as boss, Leonetti was made underboss and things began to change. "He always told me," he says, "you gotta kill people. You gotta keep on killing them," Leonetti said. "That's how things work, La Cosa Nostra. That's how he looked at a problem. They would have to kill him not to be killed. But there was no more brotherhood. I mean, my uncle took over, and the way he was acting, it wasn't the same. He was breaking all the rules that he taught me to obey. And I was disgusted. I couldn't take it anymore." He added, "Once you're in this life, there's only two ways out, jail or death. There was no retiring or quitting. I felt stuck." So after 10 murders, he faced a 45-year prison sentence. Leonetti decided to turn and become a government witness. Leonetti said he anticipated the $500,000 price on his head named by his uncle. "It's expected," he said. "I mean, what I'm doing is going against all the rules of La Cosa Nostra. I put myself and my family in a bad situation. That's why we're careful. We got to be careful." Leonetti was sentenced to 55 years in prison and served 5 years of a 45-year sentence for killing 10 people. A journalist once said to Leonetti, "Some would argue that's not justice. How do you see it? He replied, "It's justice for me. I'm happy I'm out of jail. I think I did a good job with my family that I'm raising. I'm not looking to be in the mob. I never got in trouble after I got out of prison. So I think I'm doing pretty good. I think it's a success story." The following is based on information Leonetti gave the New Jersey State Commission of Investigation. Nicodemo, Little Nicky Scarfo, was formally inducted into the New Jersey Cosa Nostra crime family during the reign of Angelo Bruno's predecessor, Joseph Ida. The event took place in the mid-1950s. Several men were made during the same ceremony, which occurred in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, at the San Sauci Restaurant and Cocktail Lounge. Bruno was crafty when he was killed. Inducted with Little Nicky were Scarfo's cousin Anthony Tony Buck Piccolo and two uncles, Michael Mike Buck Piccolo and Joseph Joe Buck Piccolo. Another uncle, Nicky Buck Piccolo, was inducted some 5 years earlier. Nicholas Joseph and Michael Piccolo are brothers. The Piccolo brothers are Leonetti's great uncles. Anthony Piccolo and Leonetti are second cousins. Felix Skinny Razor Di Tullio was Scarfo's first capo. He was the man the young soldier directly reported to. Di Tullio took Scarfo all over when he traveled around and introduced him to a lot of people involved in La Cosa Nostra, Leonetti recalled. Di Tullio owned the Friendly Tavern, a South Philadelphia bar located near 8th and Washington Street. It was a known location for gangland hits, Scarfo told Leonetti. The Friendly Tavern was used to murder people when Di Tullio was still alive. Di Tullio played a crucial role in the life of many young Philadelphia wise guys. Di Tullio's lounge was a veritable mob college and place where Wise Guy 101 was taught by the consummate professional. An awful lot of gangland hits allegedly occurred there, too. Skinny Razor was one of the Mafia's foremost assassins. A character in the Martin Scorsese film The Irishman is based on Skinny Razor. Bobby Cannavale plays Skinny Razor. A narcotics conviction caused Joseph Ida to disappear in 1959 when he fled to Sicily. This marked the rise of the boss who fashioned the Cosa Nostra entity in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, into a force to be reckoned with. Angelo Bruno was the son of the earlier Philadelphia boss Joseph Bruno, who ran the crime family from 1927 to 1946 when he died. Joseph Bruno succeeded the region's first boss, Salvatore Sabella, whom the Sicilian Mafia sent to the city to organize its rackets. Sabella was boss from 1911 until 1927, until his 1927 death when Joseph Bruno assumed power. In or around 1962, Dominic Reds Caruso disrespected Bruno's consigliere, Joseph Ragnetta. Bruno deemed the act of disrespect a death penalty offense. He put together a hit team that included main members as well as associates. The hit team consisted of Scarfo, Santo Idone, Santo Romeo, Anthony Casella, and Salvatore Merlino. Others were also involved, but Leonetti did not know all the names. When the hit was carried out, Scarfo, Romeo, Casella, and Merlino all lived in South Philadelphia. Idone lived in the Chester, Pennsylvania area. The chosen location for the grisly murder was the 9M bar located at Vinland, New Jersey area. A member of the Bruno crime family named Anthony King Kong Perella had owned it, or a Perella relative. Leonetti learned about the murder from assorted conversations over the years with Scarfo and others, including Salvatore Merlino and Idone. Apparently, the Red story was a good fodder for conversation. In the summer of 1986, Scarfo, Leonetti, and Idone, then a capo in the family, met on the Atlantic City boardwalk, somewhere between the Enclave condominiums and the Golden Nugget Casino. The talk turned to Reds. As the story went, apparently some facts changed with each retelling. Reds Caruso had the gall to attempt to shake down Ragnetta for money. Reds also slapped Bruno's consigliere in the face. Scarfo had been on very friendly terms with Caruso, so once his murder was ordered, he worked their relationship in order to romance the target as per basic mob strategy of setting someone up. On the day the murder was carried out, Salvatore Merlino visited Caruso's South Philadelphia house. "Nicky Scarfo is waiting for you in the car outside," Merlino told Reds. Reds went up to the car to see Scarfo. "I need you to come with me to a bar in Vineland," Scarfo said. "No problem," was Caruso's basic reply. The bar was actually closed for business that day. Members of the hit team got the keys from the bar owner. The plan went like this. Scarfo was to bring Reds to the bar. Then Anthony Casella and Santo Romeo would hold him while Santo Idoni choked the man to death. Bruno had expressly ordered that Caruso be strangled. But as the saying goes, men make plans and gods laugh. Idone arrived too late to play his designated role. Scarfo had simply shot Caruso 5 times with a handgun concealed in his coat pocket, where it had been wrapped in a scarf. Scarfo, thinking the job was done, suddenly heard Reds tell him, "You got me, Nick." So Scarfo grabbed an ice pick and stabbed the man repeatedly in the back. In fact, during the stabbing frenzy, the ice pick broke apart. A loud knock on the door gave the guys a fright, the one still breathing anyway. The planned time of the hit happened to coincide with the time that a local cop was known to stop at the bar for his daily beer. The killers thought it was the cop knocking, but no, it was Santo Idone. The man had got back to work, placing a rope around Red's neck to make it appear that he'd been strangled to death, as Bruno had ordered. Caruso's body was then wrapped in blankets or plastic and placed in the rear of a pickup truck, which drove it to a pre-dug grave somewhere out in Vineland. As per the boss's instruction, Red's body was to be placed beside the grave, but not buried. Another team had dug the grave. The burial team was going to return to bury the body after the first team had driven off in the pickup truck. Bruno had purposely set it up this way so that the two teams would never know each other. Scarfo later found out that Bruno had added an additional twist. The men who dug the grave had simply refilled it without depositing the body inside. Instead, they drove off with Red's body and buried it in another grave. Bruno had decreed the murder and burial be carried out this way in case a member of the hit team ever cooperated with law enforcement. If the informant ever brought law enforcement to the grave and no body were found, then the informant would look like he'd been caught deceiving law enforcement. After Caruso's body was dropped off at the fake grave, Scarfo drove the pickup truck to his parents' apartment building in Atlantic City where a 90-year-old Leonetti lived. Scarfo picked up Leonetti and took him for a ride to Philadelphia. Scarfo was driving a vehicle used to transport the murdered man. He figured police would be less likely to stop him with his young nephew along for the ride. Scarfo told Leonetti the story that a very bad man had been killed and that the very truck they were driving had been used to bring the man's body to the grave. Scarfo was bringing his nephew to a place in Philadelphia where the truck could be destroyed. For years after the murder, well into the 1980s, Scarfo and Leonetti went to the 9M bar to meet with Salvatore Merlino. Red's brother was often there drinking. Scarfo had known the brother for as long as he'd known Reds, and each time the trio ran into him, Nicky Scarfo went up to the brother to say hello to him. Leonetti couldn't recall the name of Red's brother. On January 30th, 1962, Caruso's wife reported her husband missing. Caruso's body was never found. Salute to Ed Scarpa and the Cosa Nostra News. So great article. Salute. Guys already, like, share, comment. Let me know what you guys are smoking on. Throw some smoke in the atmosphere. And we will talk soon, all right?